Okay, here we go. How to answer a heretic 101. We are we're learning the Gemara in Perek HaChelek, Sadiyam Days. By the way, the first thing to answer a heretic who wants to present an opinion to you and he brings a biblical source, the first thing that you say to him is, where did you learn how to read? Your source. Now you might think that's a very silly question. I learned in school how to read. And you explain, no, what I mean is, how do you know when you're quoting me a verse from the Torah, from the Tanakh, from the Bible, that the letter that you just read, a beis, you're reading in Hebrew, that the beis is pronounced b, and a gimel's g. How do you know that a beis is a beis and a gimel's a gimel? Maybe a gimel's a beis, and a beis is a gimel, and an aleph is a beis, and a dalet is a zayin. How do you know what it is that you read? You say, oh, because my rabbi told me. Oh, really? Oh, who told him? Oh, who told? So there is an oral tradition. It must be, because the Torah was not given with any vowelization. We don't even know what letter means what. That was all given because an oral tradition, and therefore, what kind of heretic? The one that does not believe in the oral tradition. The answer is there must be an oral tradition, because you cannot have a written Torah without an oral Torah. Okay? Okay, here's another direction. If they say, okay, I accept the Torah, but I don't believe that the resurrection is found in the Torah. Show me where you could find the resurrection in the Torah. I believe in the 5 books of Moses, but where do you find the resurrection? That's the Gemara we're learning right now. Okay, everyone have the Gemara inside? It says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Menayin. Everyone have the spot? It is, side 2. We're already on side 2. On Sadiyam Days, 90 folio B. We are 6 lines down, 2 words in, there's brackets that say Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Everyone have that?
Yes.
Says Rabbi Yochanan. Menayin, what's Menayin mean? Excellent. From where do you know? Beautiful. You guys are getting it. This is how you get the oral tradition. You start getting it. Menayin l'tchiyas hamesim min haTorah. From where do we know that there is such a thing called the resurrection of the dead? From the Torah. What should be after that word that I just said? Question mark. You can put a question mark in your Gemaras. From where do we know Tchiyas HaMesim from the Torah? Shenemar. What's Shenemar mean? That we learned Shenemar in a verse. Shenemar is referring to a verse. That we learned in a verse. We have an open, explicit, biblical verse. The verse, for those who will go look it up, is in Bamidbar Yudches Chavches. If that sounded like Hebrew to you, it is. And if you need a translation of that, for anybody around the world that might want to look this up in an English source, so that would be Numbers 18:28. Okay? Doesn't sound as good as Bamidbar. Numbers. In the book of Numbers, 18:28.
Jesus said it.
So I'm reading actually the whole verse. I have the whole verse here inside. I'm going to read you the whole verse. Kain tarimu gam atem trumas Hashem mikol masreisechem asher tichku meis bnei Yisrael. And now it starts our verse. I'm going to translate. Unesatem mimenu, and you should give from it as trumas Hashem la'aron hakoyin. And you should give from it a truma, a offering, a separation to Aaron the Kohen, to Aaron the Kohen. Okay, what is this referring to? We need a little bit of background. Michelle was like, what is going on right now?
Prove you Therese Mason.
Okay.
Let's talk about giving
Truma. Okay, you're talking about giving gifts to the priestly class. Okay, where did something not connect to? So let's explain it. First of all, just background information. We have different gifts that the Torah obligates for us to give. Sam, if you grow 100 apples, are you allowed to you take the apples into your storage house? Are you allowed to just eat 100 apples? No. you actually have to give a number of gifts. We call them tithes. You have to tithe your food.
In English,
Tithe. Tithe the food. Okay? You have to be mafresh to give gifts to tithe. There are a number of tithes that we do. So let's say you have 100 apples, okay? 100 apples. Okay, gift number one, I'm going to do it anyway. It's much easier for me. Gift number one, you have to give Truma Gedola. What's Truma Gedola? Truma Gedola is the big Truma that goes to the Kohen. How much do you give? How much Truma do you give? Now, how many apples are we starting with? 100 apples. Truma Gedola is, it doesn't have an amount. You can give even the smallest amount. But Chazal, the sages teach us that the average amount is 1 out of 50. That's called a Beinoni. You give 1/50th of your crop to the Kohen. It's actually not that much, right? An ayin raw, someone has a narrow eye, gives 1/60th. Someone has an ayin toiv, has got a good eye, gives 1/40th, right? So what's the percentage? Anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5%, is that correct, of your crop? Because it's 50 at 1.5 to 2.5? 1/60th would be 1.5%, and 1/50 would be 2%, and 1/40th would be 2.5. Is that correct? Okay. So which means, how many apples am I giving away? 2 apples. Which means, how many apples do I have left? I have 98 apples. Comes my next. It's not called Truma, it's called Meiser. What's Meiser? Meiser literally means 10th. It goes to who? First of all, this goes to the Kohen. Goes to Mr. Cohen. And this goes to the Levi. Okay, Mr. Cohen. And Mr. Levi.
Meiser?
This is Meiser. Yeah, Meiser.
Mr.
Mr. Levi?
Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Cohen. Oh, really?
The final letter is a resh?
This is a Mem Ayin Shin Resh. Yes, Ma'aser. Okay? Meiser goes to the Levi. Meiser is a 10th. But it's a 10th of what's left. So how much is left? Excellent. Well, there's, let's say, 98 apples left. And so therefore I'm going to be giving 9.8.
Do you round up or?
You give 9.8 apples. You can give pieces of apples. Okay, so we're at 9.8 apples, which means how much do we actually have left?
We have 88.2 apples.
Good. Excellent. 88.2. Okay, so right now we have 88.2 apples left. 88.2 apples left. Apples left. Okay, now there's something interesting. The Levi, Mr. Levi got 9.8 apples. He himself has to give something called Trumas Meiser. Okay? He gives them a Trumas Meiser. Which means he gives a Meiser. He gives a 10th of this amount, which would be how much?
0.98.
Yeah, 0.98. So he's giving almost 1%. 0.98 to Mr. Cohen. Which means, how much does Mr. Cohen, it could be 2 different people. How much does Mr. Cohen get in the beginning? He gets 2 apples. And if he has a Levi that wants to give him, he's going to get basically another apple. Okay? Then with what's left, after you take 88 apples, 0.2, you take another 10%. That's called Meiser. It's called Meiser Ani to the poor, or you take it to Yerushalayim called Trumas, called Meiser Rishon. Meiser Ani, excuse me, or I'm forgetting the name right now. You take it to Yerushalayim. Okay.
I didn't understand the coin, the Levi coin.
Levi, when he gets his 9.8 apples, because the Levi gets 10% of what's left, he gets 9.8 apples. The Levi then has to give to a Kohen. He can't eat his 9.8 apples.
So much.
10%. So 10% of 9.8 is 0.98. This is more math than you guys thought you were going to get today. Okay, it's good to keep the brains elastic. Okay.
We're enjoying it, so.
Baruch Hashem. Okay, then another 10% of Ma'aser Ani. Okay, that's for the poor. Ma'aser Ani is another 10%, which means how much are we left with? We take another 10% off? Or Ma'aser Shem?
Like 80 apples.
We're going to be, what is it, 78 point? 78 point, I think 79.38, I think. 79.38.
No, because you're taking 79.
So net, because we're taking another 10% of this, of 88.2, and giving that 10% to either Ma'aser Ani or 10% take to the Beis HaMikdash to party with God. Okay? This is something we'll talk about another time. Ma'aser Ani, Ma'aser Shem. But basically, of your crop, of just the pure apple harvest, you have 79.38 apples. That's leftover from 100. Okay, so you're getting basically 20% of your crop gone. Now, it might be that you get Ma'aser Sheni, which you take to Yerushalayim. That's basically about a fifth of your yield is going away. Okay. This verse that we just mentioned, like, what does it have to do with the resurrection of the dead? This verse that we mentioned, remember when we got to Ma'aser, we say you take 10% after you took Truma Gedolah, which means you have 98, and then for 10% of the 98 is 9.8. Now the Levi gives his Trumas Ma'aser to Mr. Cohen, right? That's what the verse is dealing with. Let's read this verse very carefully. Remember, when do we have to do this? When we're outside the land of Israel or when we're inside the land of Israel? Inside, excellent. This was only commanded when we came into the land. When the Torah was given, were we inside the land or outside the land? Outside the land of Israel. Okay, pay attention. I want to see if there's some scholars, some high-level thinkers here that could pick up on what's going on here. Yeah? Yeah, some Ivy League chevra over here. Okay? There's Ivy League and then there's Yeshiva. It's a whole other thing. All the guys that tell me that they went to fancy Ivy League law schools and then they came to Yeshiva, they said, if I would have come to Yeshiva first, I would have breezed through law school. They really have to think around here.
That's my plan.
You're setting up, like they're not going to know what hit them. Okay, so pay attention. Let's see if you can sleuth and understand what this verse is now teaching us. Read carefully. Unesatim menenu, and you should give Trumas Hashem. You should give it. Talking to the Levi. You should give the Trumas Hashem. Talking to the Levi. To who? La'aron HaKoyim. To Aaron HaKoyim. Hold on. They're inside the land when this verse is being written or outside the land?
Awesome.
Did Aaron ever come into the land?
No, he's dead.
He doesn't come into the land. He doesn't make it into the land.
Counterpoint, potentially.
Let it sink in.
So I think I see what it's saying, but for example,
Let's just see the Gemara, and then we're going to adjust the point. We're going to adjust the point. Let's see what the Gemara first. So the Gemara asks it right away. The Gemara picks up on the anomaly right away. V'chi arn la'olam kayim. Wait a second. It said you're going to give the Trumas Ma'aser to Aaron. What, is he going to live forever? That you're going to keep giving it to him? Doesn't say you're going to give it to Aaron's children. It says you're going to give it to Aaron. And even, there's different mafarshim here, either it means, is he going to live forever, i.e., you can have an opportunity to keep giving it to him, or you can ask simpler, he doesn't even come into the land, so why tell me give it to Aaron? He never is going to come into the land of Israel. Okay, haloi, the Gemara says, what's haloi? How do you translate that? Don't tell me, and that, no. Haloi is in fact, that's how you translate haloi, like a pirate. It's like I'm upset. Not like like a big I. It means like you're upset, you're disgruntled at the suggestion that he's going to live forever. No. He's not going to come into Eretz Yisrael. He's going to die before he comes into the land. Loi nechnas la'Eretz Yisrael. Shenais and loi truma, that you're going to be able to give him truma. And therefore, the verse is telling me to give truma, this trumas meiser to Aaron, but he's never going to come into the land. And therefore, what are you telling me to give it to Aaron? Ella. Rather, what must the verse be teaching me? Melamed. It's teaching me she'asid. Asid means in the future. Lichyos, he will live. Once again, he will resurrect. Lichyos, he will be resurrected. The Yisrael Naisnan Lo Truma. And we, the Jewish people, will give to Aaron himself. Aaron HaKoyin. Aaron will get up out of the ground, and you will go and give him truma. If you're a Levi, in this case the Levi, you can give him your regular truma gedolah. This one you give to Aaron, truma gedolah. But here, even the Levim will be able to give them a trumas meiser, and therefore mikan, from here, l'tchias hamesim min haTorah. Full stop. Yes, Sam.
So I don't know the specific Rosh from Torah where it's talking about like giving the Levites the tribe, but Levi, the person, isn't so much alive, but it's like Aaron Cohen is embodied in all of the Cohen.
So that's an excellent point.
Just like Levi
Beautiful, excellent point. The only problem with that point is that it was raised by the rabbis. As all these things are, rabbis are smart, especially the old ones. And how is that point addressed? I'm going to quote you. It's good that you're thinking that. The Aruch LaNer, the great halachic authority, the great commentator on the entire Gemara, points out. You can make a note on the side of your Gemara. That's why it's good. Keep your handouts. You need more? We'll get you more. Says the Aruch LaNer. He makes a comparison between two places in the Torah. One place in Vayikra Vav Tes, Leviticus 6:9. In Leviticus chapter 6 verse 9. So it points out that you should give, it's talking about a mincha offering. A mincha is a flour offering that you should give to Aaron. And there in Leviticus it points out, and you should give it to Aaron and his sons. His sons meaning, and the progeny, that which comes forth from Aaron for all time. All the priestly caste for all time. However, the contrast between our verse is it doesn't say and give it to Aaron and his sons, it's give it to Aaron himself. So from there we see that it was pointing something else out. If it wanted to tell me that you're going to give it to the progeny of Aaron, that was what it was adding there, then add sons. No, you're going to give it to Aaron himself. Yes?
Aren't there many places in Tanakh where they refer to the whole tribe in the singular? Like Reuben did this, meaning the tribe of Reuben did this, or God did this, meaning the tribe of, like, isn't that the common thing?
So we do if that's the primary thing, but here, this is like, it's a superfluous point. We're mentioning you're going to give it to the Kohanim and then to Aaron. Give it to Aaron.
So it says in this verse,
give it to Aaron.
Does it also say to the Kohens and then also to Aaron?
They're going to give the Truma of Hashem from all the Meiser, and then give it, the Truma of Hashem, again Truma, La'aron HaKoyin, to one person, not even to the Koyin. It should have said to the Koyin. They're going to give it to Aaron himself. Yeah.
Where do we get that they would give it to other Kohanim in Israel?
Banav, from his children.
Where does it say that?
Banav is we find with the other gifts, the other Kohanic gifts. Here specifically in this area, it only says to Aaron himself. So what was that pulling out? It was drawing out that Aaron himself is going to get up at the time of the Tchias HaMesim, and he's going to receive Truma. Okay?
I get a little lost, but I don't want to interrupt.
Thanks. A big question which comes up is, we're going to give Truma in the time to come. The Gemara says in Brachas that in the world to come there's not going to be any eating and drinking. is just going to be learning Torah. Tzadikim yoshim v'atra sem b'rashem. So the answer is also that Aruch LaNer points out that we're talking about the days of Mashiach. The days of Mashiach, that's when the first resurrection of the dead is going to be. There's going to be two resurrections. There's going to be one resurrection of the dead when Mashiach comes. There's going to be another resurrection after the era called Shabbos, before the great day of judgment. Right after the great day of judgment, and that's going to go into the world to come. The first resurrection, though, is going to be in this world. Like the Gemara says, there's no difference between this, i.e. the days of Mashiach, and the way the world is now, except one interesting thing. The Rambam paskins this way: Shibud Malchus Bilvad, the subjugation of all the world's governments to Mashiach. That's going to be a great day, because there's going to be no more distension, there's going to be no more arguing, there's going to be no more
criticizing Israel.
Oy vavoy. Oh, forget, no more Democrats, no more GOP, no more nothing. No more, I don't even know how many parties are in Israel. No more politicized, just pure truth. Who's going to have the pure, undiluted truth? Mashiach. He's going to be a king. He's going to be a king, that's his role. He's going to be a king of Israel, and he's going to be the king over the world. But the nations of the world will not lose identity. They will just ask Mashiach for guidance. He will be the guiding light of all humanity. And everybody will know that his wisdom, like we mentioned, we gave a series of classes on Mashiach, that his wisdom will be paramount, will be supreme. And everyone will look to him for guidance on how to run their lives and how to ultimately become close to Hashem and achieve life in this world, but ultimately for the world that is going to go on forever. Yeah.
It's maybe slightly out of scope, but we hope that Mashiach is going to be fully human.
Fully human. Mashiach will be a human being.
Where did you get who
So,
get the idea that
So
it's like a
Mashiach will be
dead
fully human. We gave a class called 10 Things We Know About Mashiach, where we go and review 10 things. It's posted online for those that want to see it. It's 10 very clear points that we know with 100% certainty that Mashiach will have these qualities. It will also be an era of consciousness, but it will be a human being of flesh and blood.
And he'll die.
Well, in the era of Mashiach, that's Mashiach ben Yosef. In the era of Mashiach, there will be a transition away from death as the world becomes more and more purified until people are living longer and longer, which also will relate to people having better awareness of just health. Mashiach is called the Peliyot, the wondrous advisor, which means he will have the best life advice for every single thing. Every scope of existence, he will have the answers for. And he won't do it for any personal motive or anything selfish. He'll be a man of God.
How is he going to get all this stuff?
So
He's just born.
well, everything's in the Torah. Everything is in the Torah. And he's also a person who's sensitive to truth. Someone who gets it. And by the way, we used to live our lives this way. When a person had a question with business, you're it's the 18th century. Who did you go to? You went to your Rebbe. He had a question in business. You knew that he understood the Torah has the answers to everything in life. You understood that inside of it until this very day. I had business questions. I had questions about life. I go to the Rebbe. I said, what do you think about this? Someone whose mind is thinking straight and who has a feel of what's real and what's true in the world. So Mashiach will be the ultimate advisor in all areas. He'll also be a political genius. Just like the kings of Israel were great. King David was everything. King David was perfect, the greatest maybe Jew of all time, and he was the messianic seed. And Mashiach is going to be of that elk. Yeah, Mashiach.
Is the barefoot lifestyle?
Will Mashiach have barefoot shoes?
Yeah. Do you think that's?
Yeah, what's my over under odds?
Yeah.
I think it's likely. Either that or Yeezys. One of the two. Okay, Rabbi Stefan, have a wonderful day.
Are we sure it's not easy himself?